Let's do a story about Donald Trump and Israel, because we notice that things are changing. When Alex Jones and AOC are both using that G word to describe Israel's assault on Gaza, that lets you know that we are in a moment of political flux. And Russell pointed this out in the last show, and we've said this, going back a while now. Trump, he can't be trusted to turn his back on Israel. But then again, he is a wild card. There is a randomness factor with Donald Trump. And so Trump did an interview for Israeli TV this week, most of which has not been released. There is a short clip that we'll play in a moment. But ABC News did a write-up on this. Trump appears to blame Israel for anti-Semitism, says Israel made a very big mistake. Former President Donald Trump appeared to blame Israel for anti-Semitism, saying Israel made a big mistake in its response to Hamas's attack on October 7th and is, quote, losing a lot of support from around the world. But he also noted that he would have responded very much the same as Israel did against such an attack. Sitting down at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend with Israeli outlet Israel Hayom, which is owned by the late major Republican megadonor and casino mogul Sheldon Adelson's family. Sheldon Adelson, by the way, is the birthright guy, too. He funds all the birthright trips. Major right-wing Zionist. Yeah, was a major right-wing Zionist, yeah. Trump said, that's because you fought back, when he was asked how he would deal with a wave of anti-Semitism in the wake of the Israel-Hamas war. Well, that's because you fought back, and I think Israel made a very big mistake, Trump reportedly said in a part of the interview that was released only in text, calling attention to the harrowing images from the war released by the Israeli government. I wanted to call Israel and say, don't do it. These photos and shots. I mean, moving shots of bombs being dropped into buildings in Gaza, Trump reportedly continued. And I said, oh, that's a terrible portrait. It's a very bad picture for the world. The world is seeing this every night. I would watch buildings pour down on people. It would say it was given by the defense ministry and said whoever's providing that, that's a bad image. So he's not exactly saying you shouldn't have done it. He's saying you shouldn't have shown it. Right. When Israel Hayom followed up, claiming terrorists are hiding in buildings, Trump reportedly responded, go and do what you have to do, but you don't do that. Again, is he saying don't bomb the buildings or don't release video of the bombed buildings? Because the video is going to come out whether the Israeli Defense Ministry releases it or not. We've seen all that on social media. Not all of it is from Israel, obviously. In fact, most of it is not. And I think that's one of the reasons that there has been a lot of kickback. If people didn't see that every single night, I've watched every single one of those. And I think Israel wanted to show that it's tough, but sometimes you shouldn't be doing that, the former president continued. In another part of the interview, released as a part of a 10-minute edited video, Trump warned Israel that it's losing a lot of support from the world and urged it to end the war. Let's go to this video before we wrap the article.
That being said, you have to finish up your war. You have to finish it up. You got to get it done. And I'm sure you'll do that. And we got to get to peace. You can't have this going on. And I will say Israel has to be very careful because you're losing a lot of the world. You're losing a lot of support. But you have to finish up. You have to get the job done. And you have to get on to peace. You have to get on to a normal life for Israel and for everybody else.
Okay, and the last piece of this article that I'll read. The Trump campaign released a statement to ABC News on Monday night saying the former president has made clear he fully supports Israel's right to defend itself and eliminate the terrorist threat. He also believes that Israel's interests will be best served by completing this mission as quickly, decisively, and humanely as possible so that the region can return to peace and stability. So you have here kind of a follow-up to, Russell, what you were saying, which is not that Trump has any real convictions one way or another. If you notice, the emphasis seemed to be, and I'm assuming this video will come out so we'll get a better picture of what exactly he meant, but from reading that, what he seems to be worried about is that the video and the images are bad PR and that they should have, kept that under wraps? Of course, that's absurd.
Well, I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he is saying they shouldn't have done it. Because,
is that?
I think so.
It's hard to tell from a quoted piece in a write-up. Like I said, we'll have to see the video.
I'm looking at it in context, and also I've mentioned this before. Bob Woodward wrote a book about the early couple. I think it covered the first couple of years of the Trump administration, where he tells a story about how Trump was very disturbed by calling Gold Star families. I think he's squeamish about war, about that kind of mass death. It's one thing to fuck contractors. It's another thing to commit a genocide. I honestly don't think he's comfortable with that kind of evil, that level of evil. People who have decided to make a career in politics, even if you start out with good intentions, it's the old road to hell. Right, to really get ahead in politics, but you are so morally compromised by the time you're a national politician that whatever part of you might have been disturbed by things like that has been put in a box in the back of a closet somewhere.
Right.
I think for Trump, he just is not. He's not bred as a politician. He's a New York real estate scumbag. That's a much lower level of evil than somebody who's going to lead the so-called free world.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying, and, you know, I suppose it's hard to pass final judgment until we actually see the video and the whole conversation, which I'm assuming will be out over the next few days, which we'll probably cover later in the week, if not Sunday. But, you know, like that quote there, you do what you got to do, but you shouldn't do that. Again, a lot of what Trump says is like vague on purpose. This is how he's been able to draw a lot of support from a lot of different places, because he's able to exude certain sentiments without getting specific as to where exactly he falls on the issue. Like, yes, I think Trump prefers peace to war in ways that, you know, I mean, fuck Joe Biden. We don't even have to talk about Joe Biden. In ways that Jake Sullivan surely doesn't. In ways that Tony Blinken surely doesn't. Right? So I think there's truth to that. On the other hand, when he said, you do what you got to do, but don't do that, that sounds like a mobster saying, yeah, you do what you got to do. Just make sure nobody finds out about it.
Yeah, I don't take it that way. I think it bothered him. Overall, he's saying it's bad PR.
Right.
But I honestly think you also look, mechanics. This isn't true everywhere, but in New York, mechanics are notorious for ripping you off.
Right.
A lot of the accusations people make against Trump are basically like saying, well, this guy was a mechanic who ripped people off, so sure, he's evil and going to be comfortable when you tell him to go murder a bunch of people. You know? Go grab Jim the mechanic and be like, listen, I want you to blow up Gaza. What the fuck? What are you talking about? Right. That's how I read him, man. I think he's not comfortable with this side of politics. And I also think, look, I mean, give him his due, man. Because he's not ensconced in Washington, I think he has more latitude to just see the obvious. Like in terms of the PR here, of course, like you shouldn't have done this. This is very bad for you.
Well, also, I mean, we're getting into the weeds a little bit, which is fine. But if you zoom out to 30,000 feet, the fact that the presumptive Republican nominee for president is warning Israel that the world is losing them, or that they are losing the world, that's historic in and of itself. That represents a major sea change. Since when do you ever think a Republican, I mean, even Democrats don't do it, but a Republican especially, you think they would ever be on TV? You think Mitt Romney would ever go on TV and tell Israel, hey, you're losing the support of the world? Not in a million fucking years would you ever expect to see that.
Well, and that's what I mean. He's not ensconced in Washington, and he's not politically dependent on people who are. His people, not only don't they care what the talking heads on NBC say, they don't even care what they say on Fox. Right. So he's completely free to say things like that. His political success does not depend on pleasing the people who frame those narratives.
Please clap.